Warning: some contents may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. When I was in high school, I used to take these late-night baths usually at around 2 a.m. My classmate and childhood best friend lived next door to me, so sometimes we would stay up super late at his house, and then when I get home, I would take my bath and get to sleep. I used to sneak out to go over his house. My parents didn't know I was up that late, and our bathroom is on the bottom floor too, which was why I was able to take late-night baths without waking the whole house up. So one night, I snuck out as usual to go over his house for another night of gaming, and just before 2 a.m., I snuck back in and headed for the bathroom. I was going about my business as quietly as possible, and while I was in the bath, I heard a scream. I knew that scream. It was my friend's scream. It scared the hell out of me, but before I started to panic, I let the logical side of my brain kick in. What's wrong? Did you see a cockroach or something? I wondered, but then I heard another noise. There was now a banging sound coming from next door. It sounded like it was one of the shutters on the windows. What the hell? Was someone out there? I wondered. Just as my heart rate began to rise, the noises stopped. Concern replaced panic, and I was genuinely worried. And after a few moments of silence, I heard another noise. It sounded like one of the trees close to my friend's house was now swaying. I had heard them make this noise during heavy winds and also typhoons, but never on a night like that. There was a dense tree line between our two families' properties. It usually helped hide me when I snuck out, but now it sounded like it was hiding something else. It wasn't even windy outside. Then after a while, the trees near our house started shaking like crazy too. My panic was back. Whatever scared the hell out of my friend seemed to be very close to our house. I heard the tree that was closest to the bathroom shaking, and I knew that the tree overlooked the bathroom. I was thinking that it could be a wild animal or something. And either way, I needed to get out of the bath because I felt very defenseless in there. I got out, I put a towel around myself, and slowly approached the window. I looked out there and I couldn't see anything. It was dark and the bathroom was a little steamy too. I wanted to know what was out there. I needed to know, so I did something dumb. I opened the bathroom window. The second that I opened the window, I looked up a little and I saw a pair of eyes staring at me. There was a woman, halfway up the tree, glaring at me wide-eyed. Her face seemed unusually pale, and she was expressionless. It was as if I was looking at a living mannequin. She had short hair, and she was wearing a dark raincoat. Seconds or perhaps minutes passed. We were just looking at one another. My feet felt as if they were frozen to the floor. I felt as if I couldn't look away. Like a deer in the headlights. Then, a drop of water fell from the faucet into the bath with a loud splash, and that brought me back to reality. I screamed at the top of my lungs and I scrambled to close the window, and once the window was shut, I locked it. I heard the sound of the tree branches and leaves moving, and then I heard a thick, heavy thud land outside on the ground just beyond the window. The woman was right there behind the window, and only a thin layer of glass separated us. She stood there and stared that stony face stare at me. She raised a finger and began to tap at the glass. I backed away from the window towards the bathroom door. The taps grew into knocks, and the knocks grew into thumps, and before long she went hammering on the window. I thought that it would break. It was at that point that I heard my dad shout something from the upstairs window. I opened the bathroom door and I got out of there. My body felt ice cold, and I stood there in my towel shaking and terrified. My dad went outside, but before he got downstairs, the woman was already gone. The next day at school, I asked my friend what he saw, and he confirmed that he saw the expressionless woman banging on his window too. He said that the woman was singing in a quiet voice, "Open the window, open the window." I was scared for days after that. She haunted my dreams. We quit the late night gaming sessions, and I never took a bath that late ever again. Even as an adult, I don't like to be in the bathroom at night for extended periods. She never came back, but I don't think I can ever get her expressionless face out of my memories. It was the most terrifying thing that has ever happened to me. This is a very weird and frightening experience, which happened when I went to stay with my parents. I had been at university, and it was a nice chance to take a break from hitting the books. That night, I had dinner with my mom and dad. I took a long relaxing soak in the bath, and I headed back to my childhood bedroom to get some sleep. But for some reason that night, I just couldn't sleep. I decided to get out of bed and grab my laptop. I figured that I could read some stories on 2chan until I felt sleepy. So I get back into bed with my laptop. My parents had already gone to bed, so the house was pretty much silent. I think that it's always this way at my house at around 12 a.m. We live out in the countryside, so it's always quiet. The only noises would be that of the various household appliances or the bugs outside. I was reading in silence until about 2 a.m. when suddenly my concentration was broken by a noise. It was the sound of laughter. It sounded as if it came from just outside my bedroom door. A chill raced down my spine, and I froze in place with my eyes locked on the bedroom door. Unknown laughter in the dead of night is terrifying enough, but there was something much more frightening about that laugh. Because that laughter was my own. I was so scared by this phenomenon, and I reverted back to my childhood state. I crawled underneath my blankets and I cowered there, and I just kept thinking, "That's my voice," again and again. However, enough time had passed for me to consider that since I hadn't heard the laughter, or my laughter, for what felt like hours, perhaps I could go to sleep. Perhaps whatever was out there was gone. And while I was mulling that over, I guess I fell asleep. And in the morning, I asked my sister, who was sleeping in the room next to mine, if she heard the laughter in the hallway, but she said that she didn't hear anything. I wonder what the hell that was. Was it my doppelganger or something?
There is one strange story that I remembered. I went to my friend's apartment a long time ago. Whilst I was eating and drinking, I suddenly felt like I wanted to have a smoke. But you see, smoking was prohibited in my friend's apartment. My friend tells me that we can go up to the rooftop because people sometimes go up there to smoke. So, up we went, up to the rooftop to have a cigarette. It feels good. The weather is fine because it is summer. This was around 1 o'clock in the morning at this time. As I was smoking, I hear a voice saying, "Hello, hello, hello." What? This sounded so clear. So I look around, but there is no one here. but I can clearly hear a voice saying,
"Hey, hello."
After a while of this, a knocking sound joined the mysterious voice.
"Hey."
What is this noise? I began to focus more on the source of the sound and pay attention to where it is coming from. And now, I can clearly hear the sound coming from the water tank up on the rooftop. This already frightened me, as this should be impossible. I should not be able to hear voices and movement sounds from inside a water tank. I thought, this is dangerous now. Whatever or whoever is in there, they shouldn't even be alive anymore. But they are calling to me. The thing is, I needed to walk right back past that water tank in order to get back inside the apartment. All the while,
"Hey, hello."
it continues constantly, and it's getting faster. Slowly, I approached the water tank. I was convinced that there was something in there, something with malicious intent. It is still calling from the inside and hitting the inside of the tank hard. What frightens me is that this is not a call for help. There is no fear or panic in this voice, just pure malice. When I was right alongside of that water tank, I hear a very, very loud. Very quickly, I open the door and I run down the stairs. Suddenly, an old man about 70 years old, he is staring up at me from just inside his apartment. He stares at me and he says to me quietly, "Do not go up there at night. It will kill you."
I saw a doppelganger for the first time in my life. I work far away from the town that I grew up in, and I live alone. It's my first time living alone, and I have had to take my time to adjust to it because I still do get bouts of homesickness. I live very far away, and I think that the distance makes it worse because I rarely see my family. Within the first few months, homesickness really set in for me. Then something unusual happened, and I had the strangest feeling that there was someone in my home with me whenever I got home. I don't know how I could possibly explain those first inclinations of someone being in the home with me. It was like a hint or a sign, but nothing concrete. I guess, for the situation I am trying to describe, I would be better off saying that I felt a presence rather than a person. But it shifted. It became something more than just hints and signs. It became auditory. I began to hear light footsteps and then soft sighs. I, perhaps like you at this stage in my experience, thought that I was just homesick. I longed for the sounds of a house full of life and a day-to-day noise. Of course, I really missed home. But the sounds I was hearing weren't the sounds of home. They were the sounds of something entirely different. I heard the noise of a young woman. I could tell by the sighs. It felt as if I had a roommate that I couldn't see. I was very aware that I wasn't alone in my home. I believed that there was someone here with me, and I even began to understand the rhythm of their life. For example, when I left for work, I would often hear the bathroom door close and the toilet seat drop. I know, I sound kind of crazy, but I have had so many experiences about these things in my apartment which I can relate back to the noises I heard. For example, the sound of the bathroom door opening and finding it left open when I went to check. Also, the sound of the kettle being turned on and gently moved. It always felt as if it was left in a different place than I left it in. Yet, I still kept my skepticisms, and I still doubted what was going on. I decided that if it was nothing but a forgetful mind and auditory hallucinations, then perhaps a trip back home and resetting my mind might be in order. When I met up with my parents again, I bared all and told them about my experiences, and to my surprise, my mother told me something that I didn't know about myself. I'm not that surprised things are moving around or doors are left open. I mean, you did sleepwalk as a child. Both Mom and Dad smiled at my realization. I had no idea that I sleepwalked. I had no memory or awareness of it. Well, that's because people who sleepwalk don't tend to remember it, Mom said. I mean, I guess that sleepwalking was a more favorable outcome than a ghost or a home invader, so I accepted that theory for a while. But it was only when I returned back to my apartment that I was reminded of the occasional feminine sighs that I heard. I grew so used to the noises that I gave a name to the person who I thought was making them, another girl. I am a female, you see, so it felt as if there was another girl living here with me. Life with another girl went on with no problems. I started to have dreams though. I dreamt that when I got home, the position of my shoes at the door changed. I put this down to another girl living in my home. It went on and on like that for a while until the moment that I met her. I was leaving for work. It was early morning and I was pretty sleep deprived. And there she was, stood right before me. My eyes caught hers and she looked as exhausted as I felt. For some reason, we nodded at one another and walked past one another. She walked into my house and shut the door as if nothing was unusual about it. I didn't know what to do other than walk away, and I just carried on my morning routine. I was so scared on the train. The reason for this was because the person had no difficulties walking into my home, had the same face as I did. I was convinced that I could have been looking into the mirror when I saw her. I felt physically sick for the rest of the day. I am always exhausted from working overtime, and I don't usually like to go out after work for drinks, and I often get invited by my colleagues. But that night, I felt like going. I just wasn't ready to go home. I think I must have not looked good that night. I must have had terrible bags under my eyes, and said my eyes have been looking off into space, contemplating what might potentially be waiting for me at home. I stayed out until the last train home, which was about 6 a.m. That was so unlike me. When I got home, I realized that the person who looked so much like me from the day before might have been my future self. There was no one there when I got home, and no one but me. And I noticed in the morning that some of my stuff had been scattered around the room. Well, I guess that isn't that paranormal after a night out. The rent wasn't cheap and the building wasn't old, so I didn't think that the home had a history or anything like that. I didn't hear any rumors about my building either. Ordinary people lived here with not that out of the ordinary lives. That's me included too in that statement. And rather than thinking that I was being haunted by myself somehow, the only way I have been able to come to terms with my situation is by thinking that I am living in some kind of time slip. I somehow tapped into a different time and space. I heard that when you meet a doppelganger of yourself, your days are numbered. I am still kind of worried, to be honest, which is why I'm here. I am here because she is still here. Another girl is still here. I can still sense her in this apartment. If she leaves, then maybe I will die. I am homesick again, and I really want to go and see my parents. I just want to get rid of everything, you know? My work, this apartment, another girl. I just want all of it to go away.
About 3 years ago, I decided it was time to move out of my parents' house and begin a life of my own. I had been saving my own money for some years now. I have always been good at planning ahead, and so by this time in my life, I had a considerable sum of money and thus was able to afford quite a nice apartment in the city centre. I think people who like scary stories will understand this, but this property I found so cheap. It was a so-called accident property. At that time, I did not know of anything like that, so all I was focused on was the fact that I had scored such a great deal, even if it was an accident property. So, I decided to move into that place immediately. Over the next 2 weeks or so, I went about my parents' place and my new place. I used the 1 million yen I had saved, and I prepared household goods and decorated the room with my favorite furniture. The completed house, it was truly a dream come true for me. The only thing I was curious about was the presence of a black stain in the center of the room. The carpeted floor, it is beautiful, with a color somewhat in the middle of white and yellow. But there is this black stain, and it does not disappear, no matter how many times I clean it. I didn't really care about it at first, but after a while, the presence of it just bugged me. So after about a week of this, I bought a rug and hid the stain so that I could not see it. Then, little by little, my daily life changed. One day, when I came home from work, I opened the refrigerator to grab a beer, but the fridge, it was turned off. There's no way this should have happened, so I simply thought the fridge had broken down. While I was plugging and unplugging the power, cold air flowed. That's odd, I thought. Later on, when I was taking a bath after having my beer, the hot water, it stopped coming out. I remember thinking to myself that the real estate agent had lied to me. This is no accident property, it's a defective property. I remember feeling furious at the time. Other small, trivial things kept on occurring in the weeks to follow. The gas range does not light up. The light in the room, it does not turn on. These things continue to happen, and it begins to worry me. One day, I was off work, so I was planning to just play games all day at home. It is not often I get a day off, so I wanted to enjoy it. When I wake up in the morning and eat, I notice that a strange, fishy smell, it fills the room. I did not buy any fish, so where does this smell come from? I checked around the entire apartment, but I cannot find the source of the smell at all. Figuring there was nothing I could do to stop the smell, I just started spraying perfume, just to cover it up at least. This was enough for a short-term solution, and I was able to settle down and enjoy my games. I must have become very immersed in my game, because before I knew it, it was getting dark outside. I grabbed my wallet and I was heading out to buy dinner. This house, it has a corridor when you open the front door, and if the light is not turned on, that area, it is very dark, whether it be day or night. There is a toilet in front of the right side and a bath in the back of the right side. And there is a door leading to the living room in the back. When I opened this door leading to the hallway to go and buy my dinner, I felt a feeling of dread as I stared up toward the door. I felt that there was definitely something there, standing in the dark. This was not a feeling I could pass off. It felt as real as if a person was standing directly in front of you, someone that you could clearly see with your eyes. More frighteningly, the further my eyes adjust to the dark, the more I can faintly make out the outline of something very real standing there. I could not judge whether this was a person or something else, but my instincts, they pointed to something else. All I could do was stand there, as in this moment, I did not know if any sudden movements might cause this one to rush toward me. I could feel the cold chill from the vent on my neck, and I felt a nasty sweat gushing out of my whole body. Out of nowhere, just as I am weighing up whether to turn the lights on or not, I heard the sound of the front door slamming strongly. When I turned on the light in the hallway, I looked around, but I could see no one there. However, a strong fishy smell wrapped the place entirely, much worse than before. After that incident, coupled with all the other strange happenings in the place, I decided to tell the real estate agent that I was moving out. Strangely, he did not argue with me or try to put up any resistance. He just signed the papers without argument. Now, I live in an ordinary rental property. No past history or anything of the sort, and I live a peaceful life. Even now though, when I find myself in a dark room or a corridor, I feel like something is looking at me, and I need to leave the light on always. Be careful of the places you move into. Do not carelessly take the first bargain you come across. Some buildings, they have a dark history that they cannot let go of. Do not go to these places. You will regret it later.
I heard this story from a good friend of mine. He said that it happened while he was staying in a cabin in the mountainous woods with some friends. As soon as he entered the room, he smelled something dreadful. He said that he had never smelled anything that disgusting in his life before. Him and his friends were tired and just wanted to relax, but they had to go in to search for the source of the stench. He looked everywhere and couldn't find anything in the room that could cause such an odor. They didn't think that they would be able to spend the night there. One of his friends opened the closet, and in there, they found a hatch in the ceiling. A board was slightly out of place, and the smell was even stronger there. They found that they had access to the attic. Naturally, everyone was imagining the worst, but one of his braver friends offered to go up into the attic to find out what was up there. He quickly moved towards the hatch and hoisted himself up, and as soon as he was up there, he was back down. He fell and he was scrambling away from the hatch in the closet. There's a guy. There's a man. He's sleeping up there. Everyone was shocked and couldn't believe that there was someone sleeping up there. Could someone who smells that bad be alive up there? The guy who went up there said that he was grinning while he slept. Everyone was freaking out that there might be some homeless guy in the lodge sleeping above them. So another brave friend stepped up to the hatch to take a look to tell the homeless guy to get out. He took a flashlight with him and shone it in the dark, dusty attic. The flashlights fell upon a dark shadow lying on the ground up there, and the smell was almost unbearable. A pale white face stood out in the darkness, and indeed, there was a man with his eyes shut grinning. He was grinning in a very strange way, so my friend decided to move in closer, and the man's eyes didn't open either. Could he not feel the bright light on his face? Or maybe sense the presence of others with him in the attic? My friend drew closer, and the man continued to grin in a strange manner. It was like his mouth was wriggling. And when he got close enough to see clearly, he almost fainted. The man was dead. It was obvious. The movement of maggots were manipulating his lips, with their feasting to give the appearance of a grin. The original poster's experience ends here, but there was an interesting comment in the thread, which I will now read. It said, "Whoa, that's amazing. I actually have a very similar experience. A mutual friend said something about a rumor of a homeless person hiding in the attic of a lodge out in the mountains like your story. We were interested in exploring urban legends at that time, so we all decided to go in search of the lodge. My friend was adamant that he knew where it was. There was a lodge where he said it would be, but we found nothing in the attic. It was really a bit disappointing, and we kind of forgot about it. About half a year later, we were in the same area and we thought that we'd try and find the lodge again. We got back to the same lodge, and it was some unmanned one which people rarely checked. We were in, and we headed to the closet and went to remove the panels there to gain access to the attic. When we looked up there, we found nothing but dirty magazines and some bedding up there. There was no sight of the owner of those items, and the attic was vacant. There was a terrible smell up there, but I guess that was because some homeless people were hanging out up there. I said aloud for some reason, no one up here." One of my friends was having a look around, and he lifted up the bedding and said, "There's something sticking out here." He then said it was kind of sticky too. I spun around thinking that he is touching some kind of discharge or effluvia, and I go to chastise him. But then, I see a mummified hand protruding from the bedding. Yeah, we bolted. We clattered down from the attic and dashed down the mountain to the nearest police station. They checked the lodge out, and we had to make statements. It wasn't a fake hand up there. It was real. I was expecting to find nothing and believed that my friend had heard some urban legend created by an internet troll. But I was proven wrong. It was a wild experience, and I wouldn't have shared otherwise if it wasn't for OP's post.
This is the story of when I lived alone for the first time. It was my first experience of living on my own, and I felt both excitement and anxiety. I was young, and my expectations were not quite realistic. I was looking all over for a place that was low in price, close to the station, and the building was new. However, of course, it is very difficult to find a place that meets these conditions. So on the advice of my real estate agent, I decided to choose a place that was a little bit older. When I first arrived to see the inside of this apartment, I was thinking to myself that it must be an old and shabby building. However, I was surprised to see that it was quite beautiful. The inside of the room was a little bit grim, and I had the impression that no one had lived there. not for a very long time. But the sunlight was good, and there was excellent storage, and the bath had a reheating function. So in my haste, I did not ask any questions. This was just a bargain, as far as I knew. I moved in the very next day, and I began my new life. The sun comes in through the windows and it feels good, nice and bright, and it gives me a hopeful feeling. But once the sun was gone and the night set in, I began to feel lonely and a bit scared. Well, it was my first time living alone, and I thought that I would get used to this soon. But I just couldn't seem to calm myself down, even after many days passed, and I found I could not sleep. Finally, after many sleepless nights, I managed to get some sleep. But this did not last long, as I woke up to a noise that I could hear from somewhere. What's that sound? I tried to move my body and look around the room, but I cannot move at all. I am frozen in place. I begin to notice the source of the sound. It is coming from the bathroom. Is it the shower? It sounds like water is dripping. Of course, I should have closed the faucet tightly before going to bed. Then, something strange happens. The sound of the dripping water, a sound that you would think would be confined to one space, it begins approaching from the bathroom. I felt a wave of dread in this moment, because this should not be possible, and I was in a state of panic. So I closed my eyes and I said loudly, "Help me! Help me!" I shouted it over and over again. However, this sound, it simply continues approaching me. Mercilessly, it ignores my pleas, and when I open my eyes fearfully, I saw it. When I notice it, it begins moaning at me, an awful sound, dripping with sorrow, anguish and pain. I tried so hard to move at this point, but still I could not. I did not want to keep my eyes open anymore, to witness the awful sight of this thing shuffling toward me, the sound of dripping water accompanying it. I tried to close my eyes sometimes, but then, every time I would open them back up, this one, it would appear much closer to me. Finally, in an absolute last resort, I close my eyes and I shout as loud as I can, "Go away! Go away!" My heart, it runs very cold, as in response to this horrible thing leans very close to me, and I feel the damp breath right beside my ear as it screeches into it. I wish that now I could tell you I blacked out. I wish that at this time I could tell you a common story trope about how I opened my eyes and nothing was there. But this was not my reality. The reality was that when I open my eyes, I see a mess of dank, wet hair falling over my face. I see cold, dead hands moving up over my face, and I feel that this thing, this horrible thing that has emerged from my bathroom, it is no longer on its feet terrorizing me. It is no longer dwelling in my shower. No, it is in the bed with me. Those next 6 hours until the sun will come through my window again, they are the most frightening hours I have ever experienced. For with every breath, I did not know if I disturb this one, will it attack me? Will it kill me? Will it take me somewhere? I lay there, in my bed, very still, daring not to breathe heavy, daring not to shift in the wrong way. All the while, this one clinging onto my back. I do not exaggerate when I say that had I been given the option to end my life right there in that moment, I would not have hesitated. At some point in the morning, finally, I was relieved that the room was bright and my body was able to move again. And ever so thankfully, this thing was gone. My first thoughts, thinking back, regardless of how real this experience felt, was perhaps sleep paralysis, as I could not move my body. This would explain everything. The noises, the hallucinations. No matter how real it felt, this couldn't possibly be real, could it? Those were my thoughts. Until two things happened that morning. The first of which was, I called my real estate agent, and after much discussion, she did tell me, eventually, that this was in fact an accident property, the site of a person dying. I knew then why this place is so cheap. The second of which was when I checked the shower. The water in the shower, it had stopped. And in fact, the faucets were turned off tight. But when I looked down at my feet, there is a puddle. The water stains, they did not stop at the bathroom. They continued to the side of my bed, dotted like footprints.
And here are the top comments from my last video. And here's the riddle for this video. Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate each and every one of you. But I would also like to thank my amazing patrons, my top tippers, and my dearest channel members. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it with all of my heart. If you want to support the channel further, you could also choose to become a patron, a tipper, or a channel member. But remember, it's appreciated, but never a requirement. I would also like to announce that we have merch now. The link is in the description of the video, along with all my other social media links, like my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, and others. You can connect with me and send your stories there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and comments are highly appreciated. And remember, your fear feeds me.